You might have seen XValue later. I'll just show you a little bit. But just this slide just gives us a very quick overview of the ecosystem that we have built over the last 7 to 8 years. And you can see at the bottom are all our data sources. So the data sources come from the major estate agencies. To put it in layman terms, if you want to know about property prices, you would want to know what your neighbor sold the property for yesterday, right? Not what your neighbor sold like 3 months or 6 months ago. And the government only gets the information, and by the time they process and release it, can take up to 3 weeks to even 3 months. But the first person to know that information will be your agent. So as a private company provider, we need to get information even ahead of what the government has so that we can create value for our clients. Then the next question asks ourselves, how do we get the information from the private sector? So I'll just share this a little bit with you. But so far today, we have all the 14 major agencies in Singapore, like ERA, DWG, Orange Tea, you name it, the familiar names. You would have be very familiar with these names. And they pipe their data transaction directly into the SRX database for us to create one XValue for any property. So it's like a computer indicative valuation that you can derive, which is useful for any property owner that wants to either price a property for sale or wants to buy the property at a neutral price, not what the seller is wishful thinking listing prices, but they don't need to have some sort of like a neutral starting point. So that is what we have provided for the consumers, but we have to integrate the information from many different sources, like the agencies as well as the government authorities like URA, HDB, and so forth. Okay, here this slide shows a little bit more about the data that goes on behind it. Then I will explain to you some of the challenges we have to meet in order to obtain this information. You can see that we have over 30 plus sources of information, and a lot of them come from the estate agencies as well as the government agencies. And so the biggest problem that we face, let's not talk about the business side of things first, but on the integration of the data. When we work with the estate agencies, is that different systems, they have different legacy technologies, which makes it extremely difficult to combine the information. Today, if you close a deal that is done by, let's say, a C&H agent from a CHA Realty, that transaction within the next hour comes to our database, and it is disseminated to thousands of real estate agents that's on the ground that's making decisions for the homeowners every day. How is that possible? The C&H database, if you see, they can use a very proprietary kind of software that can be very old, like Microsoft Access and everything. And one of the biggest challenges is how do we get that information into our own database. Traditionally, we always think that, we can just set up a web service and so forth, but it's often not practical in many of this kind of situation. So what we have learned and what we have found is that the most practical way of having a standard kind of data interface is one where you just do a simple FTP, file transfer protocol, an FTP where we just configure whatever legacy systems that they have, dump some sort of like a CSV file or whatever friendly format that you want onto a central server, and we pick it up and process. So the principle behind this kind of data transfer is such that we try to keep things as simple as possible on the source side, and we will abstract all the complexities of managing the information on our end. Okay, so what it means is, on their side, they just have to dump out a CSV file, whereas on our end, we will have to interpret the information, and that also means redundancy and data recovery and so forth. Okay, because a naive implementation will be one where if I try to transfer an information on a daily basis, I'll just send a file. Today, I'll just send what has been transacted in the last 24 hours. Tomorrow, I'll send the other last 24 hours and so forth. But it does not help. It is not a robust system that allows us to recover if there's a break somewhere in the link. So in the case of a web service, you can always handle it by having the different kind of technologies to do some kind of checksums and so forth. But in the case of a FTP, the best way and the easiest way is to have, let's say, dump out all transactions in the last 3 months. Just do a very simple rule. Every day, you just go on a rolling basis. Each day, you just dump out, repeat what is in the last 3 months and so forth. So if there's any break or anything, the complexity is all abstracted on the side of the consumer side, which is our side, the server side. You have to go and understand what are the delta changes and so forth, and massage the information, crunch it, and harmonize it with the rest of the databases. So principle that I would like to share here is if you are integrating with legacy systems, the best way is to keep things simple and to abstract all the complexities of managing the information over at our end, right? Over at your own end, and that is often possible. So the other thing that is also pretty interesting that I want to share is about using the government's information. And the government has been very, very supportive with quite a number of what we call a call for collaboration, CFC, the Singapore government, that allows us to retrieve the data and information from the different government agencies and to combine them to create what is possible today, like the XValue and so forth. Because you need transactions, and transactions is from URA and HTML and so forth. But the reality of things is that it is not always the case. We started the company about eight years ago, and at that point in time, if you were to follow everything by the book, I think you'll get nothing done. Because if you look at any of the public data that is out there, if you try to read between all the fine lines on all the data policies and so forth, usually the government or any data source provider will err on the side of caution, which means that if you look at, even today, if you look at URA transactions, if you try to go to the website, they'll say that, oh, you're not supposed to store or the information or transmit it in any way and so forth, which makes it impossible for you to do anything with it. And so you have to sometimes push the boundaries a little bit, show the public what can be done to add value to the information, and then as an entrepreneur, you use it and talk to the government later on. So today we have very good relationships with all the different government agencies, URA, SLA, and so forth, because they've seen what we have done. But again, if you're a nobody trying to talk to the different government agencies, I'm sure you can't get anything done. Okay, SLA, by the way, is Singapore, called Singapore Land Authority. That's where they file all their transaction information. The equivalent in Hong Kong is the Hong Kong Land Authority. If you want to work with them, and I've been working with them for like a couple of years, and it is not so straightforward because for legacy reasons, it just takes time. So I would say that the government has done a very good job in trying to open up as much information as possible through data.gov actually, but there is still some room for improvement in some pockets here and there that we need to push the boundaries if we need to, right? And it's not that I'm advocating this, but from experience, we know that as long as we make good use, value add to the information, and we prove that it is useful for the public, there is always a way out talking to the government about opening up more information. So that is another interesting learning point that I want to make. So here I want to show you a very quick demonstration of some of the applications that we have built and what it means from just a raw transaction. So we know that raw transactions are just like telling you, if I want to buy a certain unit, let's say for example Hillview Regency on the 26th floor, what the public can now access through directly from the government are just raw transactions of what is sold in the last 6 months or 12 months within Hillview Regency. The problem though with looking at this kind of transactions is that you may not be an expert in trying to find what is the exact value for that particular level or that particular home, because there are many variables that is involved. Because you may see some transactions that are at a higher floor, some at a lower floor, so how much premium should you adjust for? Or maybe there are just no similar transactions in the last 12 to 24 months. So question is, so there is a challenge, there's also a business opportunity to create more information transparency in the marketplace by providing what we call an XValue, where we actually build in the algorithms of what a standard valuer will do, in adjusting the prices and so forth. And we came up with this XValue that you see. Let me just give me a moment. Okay, so I have just done it on SRX website. This is a free portal for all consumers. Just within a couple of seconds, put in any unit number, your own home or whatever home that you want to sell or buy, and you can see one XValue here. In this case, it's on the 12th floor, 24, unit number 24. It says it's 1.06 million. And over here, you can even see this is what we call the XTrends. That immediately it tells you the valuation of this, or indicative valuation of this unit across the entire history of its time. So it is not just a range of transactions, but it just shows you exactly for that particular unit during the financial crisis how much it was worth and so forth. To a professional, they can show you a lot more information breaking down what these transactions are that will form this XValue over here. But so this is a clear illustration that there are opportunities out there where you can make information a lot more transparent and usable to the end user. But that will require quite a fair bit of handling to do. So, and just as I mentioned, we also have proprietary transactions coming from different agencies. So we have to merge all these transactions, and such that even if the government or from the URA you do not see a certain transaction happening in Hillview Regency, but because it has been closed by an agent yesterday, by maybe Propnex, the transaction comes to us, it affects the XValue here immediately, and all of us as consumers can benefit from it. Information even ahead of the market. Another illustration I want to show you is how you can actually use the data that is out there, supported by data.gov.sg, to create something that is very useful and relevant to the practitioner on the ground, so that you deliver the right information at the right time to the right person. Okay, in this case, I want to show you the valuation for a landed properties. Right? So this use case is if there's a landed property and you want to find its value, you can also do so. But we know that landed properties is a lot more difficult because unlike condos and HDBs, which are cookie cutters, they have different shapes and sizes and so forth. So the question is, how do you model all these kind of different shapes and sizes and in numbers and make it useful for the end practitioner? So imagine if I am a real estate agent and I need to value a certain property, let's say 185 Serangoon Garden Way, right? Sorry, just a minute. Give 118. Okay. 118 Serangoon Garden Way. So let's assume that this is your home. So you can see for here that just by putting in an address, it auto defaults everything for you, including its land size, its build-up size, and when it was rebuilt. So all this information comes from different sources like BCA, SLA, URA. So it's not just from one authorities. So this illustrates that the authorities' information, they all work in silos. They are everywhere, but in order to make it useful, you need to mash up all the information to make it relevant to the end user. And relevancy in this case is, I need to know when that property was built and what is its build-up size and so forth. And with that, I just press a button. You can see that it gives you a value of 3.93 million. And how did that 3.93 million come about? It came from these two particular transactions. And I don't have the time to go through the details, but there are certain interesting things that you can see over here, like size adjustments and date adjustments. So we use what we call a hedonics regression. Hedonics regression being is a multivariate regression technique to adjust so that we will compare apples to apples, because no two houses and no two units are the same. exactly the same. So if one is at a higher floor compared to yours, question is what is the premium paid per floor? So this is exactly what the head-on regression do. So there's a lot of mathematics behind just looking at the transactions, but you can add value to it. And the last thing I want to show it to you over here is this map view that we leverage one map and combine the information in one map together with all the different transaction information from URA, from BCA, from the estate agencies into one place. And you can see here that right now, if I'm trying to look at this particular unit, I'm asking the system in the last 1 year within a 2 km radius for a semi-detached freehold, show me all the transactions in a map. And it will tell me that these are all the transactions that were sold recently, but not all of them are relevant. So the system is smart enough to pick up relevant ones. But as a user, you can also navigate here by looking at it in a context. See, as I'm pressing around, you can see that in this case, there's another transaction here that was sold that was rebuilt only this year, 1st January 2015, and this, if this is relevant, you can add it to the transaction. But what is really interesting is that if you see that I zoom in over here, you can see another part of the information that comes in. So the moment I zoom in, you can see that there is dimensions information. Maybe let me just choose another one, it's easier to see. Okay, that information, again, an application created from here. This is not an obvious application until you try to merge the data that you can get from data.gov.sg. Because here you can see the land plot size, and it tells you that the frontage is 10.5 meters, the width is about 30 meters. These are very important information for any kind of valuation, but it's not available anywhere else until you figure out all the different cadastral maps and so forth, right? The different points. And so ultimately my point here is you can combine the information in what the government provides you and into one place where you can have all the relevant data, and create an interface to allow your users to benefit from it. So that's all for my sharing. Thank you very much.